One thing I can always say, Sharon, is that I've had restless nights, but I've always slept with a clear conscience.
Yeah.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
My guest this week on Island Influences is John Shakespeare. I'm delighted to have John here with me today. So John, you're the Domestic Event Fund Co-ordinator for the business agency of the Department of Enterprise. So John, you and I go back a long way, and
we do.
Yes. So I mean, it's a pleasure to have you this week on the show, and I wonder if you'd mind just going back, just telling me about what brought you to the Isle of Man in the first place.
Well, Sharon, it's nice to be here. We've been trying this for a while now. Things happen, don't they?
They do,
Lots
yes.
of things happen.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in a lovely office, in a lovely location in St John's, with a beautiful view. So it's very nice to be here. So I've been on the Isle of Man since 1984.
Yeah.
And so whether that makes me a stopover, I'm not quite sure.
No, I would think that.
Never been sure about all that.
Yeah, you qualify for that, I would say.
But basically born in a place called Derby in the Midland, which is about as far as where you can get the sea, and was brought up there. Went to school very, very close in that area. Went to prep school in a place called Broxford Hall, Doveridge near. You'll love it as Uttoxeter. We used to call it Utchiter.
Yeah.
And then went to another school very close called Repton.
That's quite
Repton
famous.
Public School, yes.
That's quite famous.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was interesting. I mean, it's when you review your life back. I remember my first school in Broxford. I remember being dropped off when I was 7 years old, which is, I suppose, it's quite young, really. I don't know how you feel about that with Luke, but
yeah. So you were boarding from age 7.
Boarding from age 7, and I remember the first being dropped off, and my mother was in tears, as mothers do, and I couldn't work out what I'd done wrong and why my mother was crying. So that was the first thing. But I fairly quickly got into that, and Broxford, this beautiful school out in the countryside, was it was a Christian place as they were in those days, but it was a really beautiful 5 years there, and where I kind of got, well, it kind of sets the scene, doesn't it, for your later life. And I had a very inspirational history and English teacher, and geography, actually. He did those 3 subjects, and also hockey.
Yeah.
Hockey, which I became to play a part of my life on the Isle of Man and through my life. And it was lovely, and it was sheltered, and it was calm, and you kind of flourished and did your own thing. And then you do the common entrance, and I went to Repton, and that kind of changed things, really, because I was a specky 4 eyes. Do you know what I mean? And there was, to be honest with you, there was a bit of, I don't know whether it's bullying or whatever at Repton. That kind of formulates, I think, also again your later years, and I had to adapt. That's the one thing that public school made you do. It made you adapt and how to get on with people, because if you didn't, you suffered.
Yeah.
And there were some issues of bullying. I kind of remember it, and that's unfortunately part of that culture. And if you read the stories about Repton, there used to be some very famous books written about Repton and that sort of thing. But it was good, and met some great people that I'm still in contact today. And of course, I was in the same study with Jeremy Clarkson, and we got up to quite a few things together.
Yeah, like what?
Oh, should I tell these tales? I don't know. Jeremy's become obviously quite well known, but he hasn't changed, actually. I don't think Jeremy particularly liked school, but I remember, funny enough, it's very appropriate to this time of the year, because we used to get up to lots of mischief. And I remember one year we bought a load of fireworks, and we didn't quite like the housemaster very much, so we went out in the dark and we wired up a series of salvos of rockets with a long fuse, and we lit the fuse, and then all these rockets exploded on the housemaster's building. And by the time they all went off, we were in bed, but someone told on us, and I remember going with Jeremy down to the headmaster's office, and I suppose this was quite a serious offence, really, when I look back on it. But
oh, yeah.
the headmaster, his name was Gamble. And he'd had his leg blown off, one of his legs blown off in the wheel, so a wooden leg. But he was like 6'6".
Oh.
And we went into study. I don't know if you've ever been in those situations where it's an absurd situation, really, and you're kind of worried, but see the humorous side. And he said, "Right, I think I'm going to beat you now." And Jeremy and I just both burst into laughing, and he couldn't cope with that, and he kicked us out and gave us, I think it was 3 months community service, so we had to go out into the community for 3 months. But we survived.
Yeah.
Jeremy didn't survive at the end, but I'm not going to say that's another story for another day. But we did remain friends for a bit. And of course, that's unique, isn't it?
Yeah.
How things happen and coincidence happen. And then he ended up marrying a Manx girl and being on the Isle of Man and things.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Repton was a great place. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But bizarrely, a lot of people didn't. You were able to flourish. The sport was good. About 16, I remember. Do you remember doing O levels?
I do.
And you had to take about 9 or 10, I think, at O levels at Repton. And you took a few years early. And I failed my maths one. I remember in the first time around, I got it the second time around. But I remember once we'd taken them at 16 years old. I think things change when you get to 16. And I remember the maths teacher saying to me, "Right, you've done your O levels. We've got a week and a half left. We're now going to learn some algebra." And I was thinking, why? I'm never going to do maths ever again. Has anyone ever used a slide rule? Let's be honest. What were those logarithm tables about? What a way. And I understand about the process. You've got to learn how to learn and take that in.
Yeah.
But I do wish they'd taught more life skills. I've never used a slide rule yet, and I don't think I ever will in my life. So I think at 19 years old, I was sent up to help run this depot in Glasgow on Prince's Dock.
Right.
I don't know if anyone knows what Glasgow was like in the late 70s, but it was an interesting place to be at that time. There was a bloke, and he sat at the desk, and on his right-hand side he had a skull, and he would stroke the skull while he was talking to you. It was really quite off-putting. But the next thing would happen, he'd reach behind his cabinet and 2 glasses and bells.
Yeah.
And if you didn't drink at 10 o'clock in the morning, you were, it wasn't right.
So that was your first experience of working outside of a family business?
Oh yes, it was. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, and how this happened next, I have no idea. But the next thing I did, I opened the paper and I saw an advert for an ice cream van driver. So how'd you go from that to that? Anyway, so I went, and they were in a place called Kingsbury. Anyway, so I went and said, they said you can start straight away.
So this is the sort of thing you can do when you're single, young and fancy free.
So I became an ice cream van driver.
Goodness.
And my round, I was allocated, was a place called Hatfield. Now, at this time, I used to, when I was in Scotland, I had enough... I was thinking about this because your document's quite interesting. It makes you think. I can't remember how I survived and how I ate when I lived in Scotland for that year and a bit. And anyway, I used to have enough clothes for 6 weeks, and then every 6 weeks I'd drive home and my mother would do my washing. I know that's really sad,
bless
isn't
her.
it?
Yeah.
But anyway, on one journey home in a pub, I met a girl called Josephine. And so that was Jo that I've been married to from the 70s. And anyway,
golly.
So when I became an ice cream van driver, Jo moved down with me. And...
I can see the attraction.
We were
ice cream.
I know. But the ice cream, again, was another fascinating thing in terms of sales and dynamics. So I was on it, and I would religiously go out, and I'd go out in all weathers. And I became the ice cream walls champion of the South or something. Is that an accolade? I don't know.
Oh, it sounds it.
But we would, remember, this is the early 80s, and we'd turn over £600 a day cash.
Yeah. It's
in these vans.
Not an insignificant amount.
And
back
then I started selling videos. And interesting out of that, there was someone called Jeremy Beadle.
What, in the ice cream van?
Yeah, and cigarettes. It was we're a mobile shop, really. But out of that came a video or a company selling videos. What I'm trying to say, a shop. But anyway, that's another story. But I would do this round every day, and I'd got so good at this that people would stand waiting for me, so I didn't have to use my bell. But it was interesting going around council estates. Let's be honest. Some of the times, and you'd see these people and they'd have 2 cars and videos and all this sort of stuff and TVs and things, and it was interesting. But it was a lovely community. And when Jo, I taught Jo to drive around London, around Park Lane and that areas, and she had a really good grounding, bless her. And the day after she passed the test, we'd already bought another ice cream van. So the day after a test, she went out on an ice cream van. And Jo's round was Colney Heath, and but if anyone knows that area, it's full of gypsy sites.
Right.
And for some reason, when I went into a gypsy site one day, and they are tough sites to go into, believe me, but the woman that ran it, the matriarch of the whole site, I went into her caravan and I recognised Crown Derby because that's where I was from, and we spent an hour talking about Crown Derby, and from that moment she said, anyone touches this man, they've got to answer to me, because they'd take your tires off and punch.
Yeah.
So Jo used to go into those sites as well, so it's quite remarkable. So we had a bit of a thriving business.
Yeah.
And at one point we were making so much money we couldn't spend it, if that makes sense.
Wow.
So all cash.
Yeah.
And Jo used to go off and do the shows like Ascot and stuff like that. So this company, it was called Southern Counties. So they had like the franchise for that area, but they'd do these shows and things like the Ascot in these trailers. People would just want a can of Coke and they'd throw a $5 on the floor and you give them a Coke. You know what I mean? It was a big money business, and of course, all good things. So I remember waking up one morning, and I was just getting ready to go to work. There was a knock at the door, and we answered the door, and there was a load of policemen and VAT officers and whatever, and the whole structure had been, it come to their attention that it was a big cash industry, if you know what I mean. And this was fascinating, because one thing I've always done is towed the line. I've never not, actually. I've always wondered what would happen if I hadn't, but I've always towed the line. Anyway, so they did a synchronised raid of the whole of the people that are associated. So you can imagine there's another 30 operators that are all associated from the depot that all get their supplies.
Yeah.
And they did a synchronised dawn raid on everybody. And you don't think about this, but so I'd done an event at Finchley, and at the time that was Margaret Thatcher's constituency. Yeah. And I served Margaret Thatcher an ice cream.
Oh, gosh.
And there must have been someone in plain clothes behind him, because when it came out, what was going on, I had said, I've been so successful, I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Thatcher, but the ice cream's quite soft. And that was used against me in saying that, I'd done really well. And the next thing is we got a VAT bill for 110,000.
So what did you do?
Well, we fought it, and actually the guy that did the investigation, he hadn't really done his homework enough, and we ended up with a couple of thousand. But that was the end of the ice cream really thing, because at the same time, my brother had done quite well in Derby, and he wanted me to come back.
So he was running still the family business. He was running
the family business.
Yeah, okay.
He was a great entrepreneur, and we had this site in Derby. I don't know if anyone knows Derby, but going from Derby to Nottingham, there was a big site called around the Pentagon roundabout, and we acquired this site, and it's a, I don't know how much time we've got, but that's another interesting story, because sand and gravel was in Derby. They were knocking down what's called the Derbyshire Royal Infirmary, and they're building a new one, so they needed massive amounts of building materials. Right. Okay. So sand and gravel was something that was really in great need. And what happened? There was a company called Tarmac, and Tarmac were very big in construction, and particularly sand and gravel throughout England, really, but particularly in the Midlands.
Yeah, sure.
And they'd had first dibs on this site, and it was right close to the River Derwent, very close to the centre of Derby. And what they did, they were looking for gravel. There was thoughts that there was gravel there, and they'd put what's called boreholes down to test the depth and see if there's any gravel. And they came back and said the site was sterile. There's definitely no gravel there. But my brother had a bit of a hunch, these hunches. So he decided to acquire the site, and he opened it up. And what had happened, because it's river gravel, where the river had been in flow, the river gravel had gone undulated. I don't know how I can describe this to people that are listening.
They drilled in the wrong place, basically.
Every borehole they put down was an undulation.
Okay,
but it turned out to be the richest seam
Oh my goodness!
of sand and gravel.
How lucky! So you
in the
went from vermiculite to gravel then?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay.
And we still had a depot in Tutbury, so we're still doing transportation at that time as well.
Okay.
And gypsum, because there's a massive gypsum mine
Right.
in Tutbury, near Tutbury as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So this sand and gravel quarry really took off. It was the richest seam of sand and gravel in the Midlands.
So you were in that for a bit.
So I came back to Derby to help run this.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
when I came back with my brother, he'd always had a passion for rallying.
Yeah.
There's a thread to this.
Well, no,
so keep with me.
Well, yeah. I remember one of the first things I remember about you, John, was this picture of you in a rally car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because the business was going quite well, and we were both working on the sand and gravel, he decided to buy a rally car. So he looked around.
Not just any rally car, though, from what I remember.
No, he had rallied in a Mini before I was old enough, so I wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
But we looked around and we went down to...
So he's quite a bit older than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went down to a company in Shepperth called Dealer Team Vauxhall, Bill Blindstein, and we acquired... There was a quite well-known rally driver called Jimmy McRae and Penty Rickula, and we worked with Blindstein and DTV, and he agreed to sell us one of the Works Chevettes. So we acquired a Works Chevette. It was a single cam Vauxhall Chevette 2.3, and so that was the start of our rallying career, if you know. And so we did a few events.
So were you the co-driver?
I was the co-driver.
Okay.
Yeah, David was the driver, and I was the co-driver. And luckily, I've never suffered seasickness, because that comes in later.
Yeah.
But I've never suffered like that. So I can sit in the car and it can be bouncing around, and it's not an issue. So we started doing okay. We did the safari rally around Liverpool, and we started 103, and I remember came third. We couldn't believe we're third. But the car. Work support was fantastic. So what Bill Blindstein did with Dealer Team Vauxhall, he offered you support above the works, the full-time works drive as well. So there was about 6 other Chevettes on the market at the same time. And we decided that we would like to have a look at the rally on the Isle of Man. And so in the early 80s, late 70s, there used to be the Manx International Rally.
Yeah, they did.
And that was very different to the...
They were massive events.
They were huge events.
They were.
People from all over the world,
absolutely.
But they were 2 or 3 days as well. And you'd go through the night.
Yeah, the International was huge.
So we decided to take part in that. Mm-hmm. So we did that for a number of years. And every time we came over, we were just blown away by how nice the Isle of Man was. And it was always sunny, and we just so that was in our minds. Anyway.
That's old chestnut.
and we did okay as well, and it was great. And tarmac rallying on here is just brilliant, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, the forests are great as well, but the tarmac rallying, the Chevette was really suited to tarmac rallying. So anyway, by that time the quarry had been doing really well, and we were getting offers. And funny enough, we had to stop. Rallying at that point, because the insurance company said you can't have 2 brothers that are running the business in the same car at the same time.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So we had to take a bit of sabbatical.
Yeah.
But it was obvious that we were going to get a really good thing, and it was going to be great for the entire family. Mm-hmm. So we decided we would move to the Isle of Man and accept the offer. I have to get that the right way around all those years ago.
Yeah.
And so, interestingly, I'll say that a bit flippantly, but at the time. I had a mother, my brother had his wife's parents, I had sisters and whatever. So as a family, we looked at where could we move to. And this is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you know more than anybody, if you want to get into Jersey, it's a closed market. You've got to prove that you've got the money in the bank to be able to get out there.
Yeah.
The same with Guernsey, and we looked at Australia. We looked at all these places, but the one that was welcoming and least prohibitive to move to was the Isle of Man. One thing I can always say, Sharon, is that I've had restless nights, but I've always slept with a clear conscience. And so you can only do your best.
Absolutely,
John.
You can't fault you for
thrown at you. But anyway, so in 2004. Was it 2004? I took a job with Jonathan Irving, and he was doing great things in Peel. He really did help to regenerate.
He's restored a lot of the old properties very nicely.
So I became the marketing manager, and we worked with Jonathan, and I think we did over 100 units in Peel. We had a great tagline, the excitement is building.
Yeah.
And Jonathan picked up pretty quickly that I liked events, and I'd done a few events in my time. So he was also innovative, and we were doing the project called Mariners Wharf at the time, so we had quite a big workforce down there. And he remembers as a lad, well before I came to that one, the old Viking festivals, particularly in the 60s. And he wanted to revive that. So he said, John, here you go. So, he didn't do things by halves, Jonathan. And we decided, we had a year, I think it must have been 2004 or 5, I can't remember now, the first Viking festival we did.
Yeah,
and,
2005.
So we did that on Peel Beach, and that was the first. So it's early November now, and I don't know when this is going to go out, but I've just finished on the last Friday doing what's called Ehauna Fire Festival, Manx Winter Fire Festival. And the first one I really did was in 2005.
Okay.
And it was on Fenella Beach. And we'd never done this before, but we had visiting Vikings, and we did this boat burning in Fenella Beach, and we had pipers in the castle. And I remember sitting in my car screaming at people on the radio, do this, go and do that. But we had thousands of people turn out. It was brilliant. Yeah. So the next year in 2006, we decided, or was it 2005? I might be being a year out here.
No, yeah.
But we decided, Jonathan had this vision of building this Viking village. And I say he doesn't do anything by halves. We built this massive village on Peel Beach with a palisade wall and a massive longhouse and workshops. And we got 3 coach loads from Poland. We got a group from Iceland. We got a group from Russia that drove all the way from Russia with all their kit. We had to work with the embassy very hard on that one. We had people from America. Yeah. There's an organisation in the UK called the Vikings organisation. They've got like 3,000 members at the time. So we had hundreds of them over. I think we ended up with 500 visiting Vikings. I'm fascinated with Manx folklore and how the Vikings influenced, how the Celts influenced, or not, the influences of all people, really. Yeah. And we've got unique things. And this was what excited Jane Prescott particularly, was to have a hall or a farm that reflects those old remedies, which are becoming more important to our lives today.
Well, especially in the light of the current COVID crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So it's to have in Cooley, which is where we originally, that's where we do the Viking villages every year.
That's for anybody who doesn't know, that's by Tynwald Hill.
Opposite down in the valley, which was the old quarry, the old sand quarry. And we do Viking villages. We've done there for about 9 years.
Yeah, I've done them a lot. Yeah.
But that's not big enough or drained enough to do the asset that we want to create.
Not year-round, no.
So the railway sidings it's a large big space, and we thought also in the bank we'd put a 500-seat theatre and do all the seasons of the Isle of Man. Mm-hmm. So in February and March, there's something happening in the folklore and the seasons, and that's where my inspiration came for these E-festivals, we're now calling them. Yeah. It's a bit of an E-brand now we've got. E-Volden and E-Howner and stuff, and we're going to come out with some more now, which is quite exciting.
But E is evening. O-E-E.
Yeah.
O-I-E.
E. So that's live at this very moment. And,
that's brilliant.
We've got, whether it happens or not, but a signature project for the Isle of Man that encompasses that, where everyone, the community can get involved with, I think it would be really good. So that's my current project. It's my last effort at the Vikings, because I've been talking about this since 1984. You've
been a bit of a serial entrepreneur, really. I mean, from ice cream wagons to Viking houses. What's your number one business tip for any existing or aspiring entrepreneur?
That's a really hard question. I did think you were going to ask me some questions like this, and I don't know. I think it's just to have belief and stick to your guns, really. I think people say I'm very passionate, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I do motivate people, and I think you have to believe in what you're doing and just keep going. I don't know what more I can say there, Sharon. That's an interesting question that I don't know how to answer it, to be honest with you.
Well, it's tenacity and passion. That's two great qualities that you if you believe in what you do. Absolutely, that's a great one. I'd ask you what you do to relax, but I don't imagine you ever do.
I've got on my paper, fall asleep. Because, that's a fascinating one, because if I'm not doing something, I'm asleep. Yeah. I've done a bit of work. There's a great friend of mine called Andrew, Trudy and Andrew. Yeah, yeah. And I did a bit of work with him about trying to represent his business from Ramsey.
Yes.
And I went off a few times with Andrew on a buying trip, and because when you're on the boat, on the Haitian boat, on that evening one, we used to have a day room in the Premier Inn in Haitian or Lancaster, and I'd gone to sleep, and we arrived about 6 o'clock, had tea, went to sleep, and I stopped breathing. So he panicked and phoned Joe, and John said, "Oh, he does that all the time. He stops breathing." And there's a side to this, but anyway, so Joe made me go and see the doctor, and I did one of his sleep tests, and I was stopping breathing something like 37 times an hour, and I had severe sleep apnea, and I've never known that. And normally it's people that are, shall we say, overweight and whatever,
yes,
but I play the bagpipes, I've got big lungs, and I'm not particularly, I don't think I'm overweight.
No.
Anyway, discovered I've got sleep apnea, so I'm now on a machine, and that's late. But basically, literally, if I stopped, and I think I've even fallen asleep round your house for dinner one night, but that's the way it was, because I was only getting no sleep. Waking up 37, and I was stopping breathing for 90 seconds or something all the time. So anyway, so if you're out there not sleeping right, then get a test.
Yeah, get a test.
So what do I do to relax? I don't know.
Well, you play bagpipes. You go and look at castles. You do walks.
I sing in the Mariners Choir.
You sing in the Mariners Choir.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm still involved in masonry as well. So, do you know what? This year, I don't know how you found it. So for the first time in my life, in April and May, I stopped because you couldn't go and do anything. And I just thought, do you know, this is actually quite lovely. So I don't know whether when I say I'm going to do something, I do it, and sometimes it may be to the detriment of yourself. I don't know, but up to COVID and lockdown, I was out every single night, and I've taken a review of that, and I've actually stepped back from a couple of things as well, thinking, do you know what?
Yeah.
There's
just people who said that actually this could be a glimpse of what retirement is like, and if you like it, great. If you don't like it, have a think about when you can get back to normal, what you can do differently.
Well, there's a Blue Badge Guide. I'm not quite sure people understand what Blue Badge Guide is, but it's a program that the government incepted, which is a proper qualification. It's a 2-year course to get it. So it's not like a Blue Badge in terms of disabled, but it's a Blue Badge guiding system tiered throughout the whole of Great Britain, and it's not easy to get it. But as a Blue Badge Guide, normally I'm out almost every single day, but I do the mainstream things. It's quite rare I go. So when the lockdown happened and when it eased up a bit, Jo, my wife, and I've never spent more than 3 weeks. Our honeymoon was to Morocco, and that's 3 weeks we were on honeymoon, but that's the longest I've ever spent. So to have months together and to go out walking every single day was completely and truly magical. And that month of end of April and May, when you're out walking the hills and the flora just blossomed, didn't it? But it blossomed like it never blossomed before. And there was no noise, there's no people, there's no traffic, there's no airplane noise. And it was just the most glorious thing. And I almost wish that we could have stopped at that point and just enjoyed it. And if that is what retirement's... The one thing that we all need is health, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can have as much money in the world, but if you can't walk these flights,
what's the point? Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. So... Interestingly, to slow down was a great thing. I don't think I'll ever be able to slow down and stop, because that's not what I'm like. But it did make me reflect that maybe, you know what I mean, I'm doing too much actually.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting point.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think are the best things about living on the Isle of Man that you haven't already said?
Well, I love the place. And actually, that's, as a Blue Badge Guide, so having coming out of around the Strand Shopping Centre for a number of years, and I've still got a bit of property management company still do that. But I thought, as I slow down, what do I want to do? So they wanted more guides specifically for the cruise ship visits that are coming to the Isle of Man, because that's obviously on the up.
Where it was.
It was, yeah. So every day I get in my car, because I'm a driver guide. There's only a couple of us on the Isle of Man. There's only 2 driver guides. And so I do sort of high-end stuff, if you like. And I pick these people up and I drive around the Isle of Man with them. And every day is different. You drive over the Slough every day, and I guarantee it's different. And even if it's raining or if it's cloudy, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely inspiring. And I think the landscape over here inspires me, which is why I do these outdoor festivals. I get very emotional. I remember on this Friday night, that was stressful. We think we're joined up on the Isle of Man, and we're not yet. We're still operating in these big silos. Mm-hmm. And I ran this new event called Ehauna, which means Hollantide even, or we know it as Hoptune. Hoptune is a relatively new thing that Mr. Franklin from Culture Van tells me, that Hollantide and Smain are a lot older. Mm-hmm. And so because we couldn't do Evolden, kindly, Culture Van said, well, roll it over, let's do something new. So
that was great.
I get really motivated by these things. And we had to change it. So if anyone hears this off the Isle of Man, we are susceptible to strong winds and weather. And we could see that there was a violent storm coming in on the Saturday, which was Hoptune, 31st of October. Yeah. So on Wednesday night, I had to take a decision, look, on my shoulders, we're going to change it to the Friday.
What a great idea.
And thank God it was. But we have a cast of 90 people in the cast that do the core praise, not all the public take part. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the police, there's all the authorities. And I've had some difficulties with harbours because we have this thing called the King Scallop season. Fishing season starts on the 1st of November.
Yes. And
that's actually why we're doing it in Howley. For me, bonfire night, that I used to love. We was a big family in England. We used to have massive displays. But over here, what relevance it's had to the Isle of Man? Yeah. So because Peel can no longer do its firework display in November, it's got to do it in October, I thought, well, let's get old Ehauna back. Yeah. And actually, Guy Fawkes and Bonfire Night pinched the ideas of fires from the old Celtic and Viking traditions. So actually, we're going back properly to the roots. And Bonfire Night is not relevant. So anyway, we decided to do it. But because of the fishing season, I had a letter. We had an email on Friday, just before the event at 4:30, saying they decided we couldn't use the harbours because of COVID. Yeah. They've got to segregate the harbours out from the visiting fishermen. Right, okay. And the Isle of Man, in their wisdom, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but they've sold 40 licences to people outside the Isle of Man. And so when these people come in, there was a debate the same week where they said they weren't given key worker status, so they'd only be able to come in, unload the catch and go off. Yeah. But, all sorts of issues came out of that. How do they throw the ropes? Who's going to catch the ropes? What happens if the fishermen are break down? You can't just send them back off into sea and all this stuff. Yeah. And you kind of hoped at that point that somebody had said, look, let's not sell these licences. Let's close our borders down, because the worst rate of infection is Ireland and from around. Mm-hmm. So there's 140 people on these vessels around. So it's likely they're going to bring this COVID to our Isle of Man. Why don't we say no? I know they get massive pressure from people like Sturgeon and Northern Ireland because of these fishing grounds, but let's just say we've got COVID, close our borders, 12 miles, no more licences until things are clear, and give those licences to the Manx fishermen who are in total disarray. I think that would have been a really good thing to do. Anyway, we've now got security on Peel Breakwater, which is now shut off to the public until the end of May. Good. I don't know about some of these decisions or the strength of people to stand up and say no. Let's protect the Isle of Man. Okay, so that's a bit of a challenge. So, what solutions and opportunities then? Well, I was the cruise consultant for the Isle of Man government in 2004, and there was a great bloke called Captain Mike Brew. He was a wonderful, inspirational bloke, and he ran the harbours really well. And he'd come up with a scheme to build a deep sea harbour wall from Summerland, because let's be honest, no one wants that site. No. The connotations with it, whatever. So we thought cruising, there's only going to want to go, and this is 2004, right? Yeah. There's only one way this is going to go. Let's put a deep sea harbour wall across there. Let's turn Summerland into a massive function conference venue, because the villa, let's be honest, only takes 1,600 people. If you've got somewhere you can host 4,000, we can get a lot bigger concerts. And if there's a hotel and a car park, let's do the infrastructure and have a tram that comes all the way down from Ramsey, stops there, but comes all the way into the sea terminal and then down to the railway station, connect it all up. And I thought that'd be really brilliant, so people can park there and get into work on an electric tram. Not talking about horse drawn. I mean, they'll still be working on it, but we're talking about electric. And that was and I think it was 64 million in 2004. And if we'd done that, that would have just been completely inspirational. Now we've got a dog's dinner of half a tramway system. Right?
Yeah.
Now they say they're going to extend it, but as part of some of the tours I'm involved with, there's a company called Newmarket. We bring about 30 groups into the Isle of Man, as well as all the other groups. But they have a 4-star and a 3-star hotel choice. So you can have some in the Claremont and some in the Rutland Hotel, for want of a better choice.
Yeah.
And what you'd do normally is you'd pick a group up for the Rutland, they come all the way up and all the way back down, so they experience the horse trams and we're building part of the tour and give the revenue to the government. You can't do that anymore. Claremont are not going to walk to Broadway if it's raining to get on those, so we cannot build the horse trams. So whoever thought having it halfway was a sensible option needs the head looking at. That's a really bad decision. And I fiercely support, people say it's antiquated, it's not good for the horses. Those horses are loved and they love doing it. I've been on them now for 3 or 4 years and they love it. And to make that decision was crazy. I think the whole Douglas Promenade scheme has been a disaster, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it seems to have cost a lot of money and
so the opportunities.
No one.
So now to be back in government, so I've been back with government for about a month. It's been really fascinating to learn the machinations, and it's a really difficult animal. And
so this is in your role as the Domestic Event Fund Co-ordinator. So that's because of COVID and because we can't go anywhere.
I don't know. People are afeared of making decisions. That's what I see. I see tiers of people having to sign this off, having to sign off. I see committees. I see lots of meetings. The great thing of the Isle of Man, I mean, look at the biosphere. When I was manager of the Strand Shopping Centre, I worked with Douglas Development Partnership very closely to get the biosphere off the ground and support them, and the guy was inspirational that did it. And we should, for me, right, because I'm hiring reward, right, I have to have a taxi license,
right,
so I have to have a private hire license.
Yeah.
If you look at the list of cars you're permitted to have, there's no electric car on that list. So I've had to get a gas guzzler. I've had to get a diesel car. They now say they're so busy with COVID, and I understand that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. But what I'm saying is we're not dynamic. Why don't we just accept that we can do tidal power? Every car on the Isle of Man should be electric. It's just, why aren't we doing this? Those opportunities there all the time. But I don't know how you break this nut or undo this nut of the systems of government. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
If you want a press release signed off, you've got to get at least 4 people to sign it off and all this sort of stuff. Everyone's afeared of making decisions.
Well, that's right. There's a previous guest on this programme, Rachel Glover, she's come unstuck, but only because she wasn't. She was able to go on Twitter because she hadn't signed any of those sort of contracts that forbade her for doing so. I know, and that's it's a shame.
I understand you've got to have governance and you've got to have protection, but
it was refreshing to have that.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah,
and it takes so much time to get everything done.
Yeah, sure.
The whole tender process, not just for the contract I've been awarded, but the tender process for the Vikings, it's taken months longer than it should have been to get out there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's all these things, and I don't blame anyone. It's just the wheels of government are not slick, and someone needs to get in there. I mean, what's great is there's been a few contracts come out to private enterprise now, but private enterprise and government working together, it's an interesting model.
It's interesting bedfellows, aren't they?
Slight dynamics, do you know what I mean? But those are the opportunities. I mean, I'm hoping. We did a thing called the Spirit of Community Kindness, which was on the 24th of September.
Yeah.
Right? And it was amazing because it was Isle of Man newspapers, 3FM, Manx Telecom and support from the Isle of Man government, and it was to thank the workers. We did it in the Gaiety Theatre. We had Clash 4, the Bulgarian Project. We had all these amazing Manx performers. We had the Mariners' Cry. First time the Mariners' Cry since 1974 ever sung on a stage like that.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those magical moments. But the best of the Isle of Man, we recorded it, but that has still not been signed off. I don't know if you want to date the time that we're doing this, but it's it's over 4 weeks that this hasn't been signed off.
Gosh. Who's that with then?
That's with Department of Enterprise.
Is it?
And you just think, okay, you understand they've got issues.
Lawrence.
You understand they've got training programs to do. You understand that there's people off sick and whatever. But why? We lose that edge, don't we?
Yeah.
E. Howner on Friday night, the BBC was straight onto it. and we've had 45,000 views or something straight away in a few days, and people saying, can we come to this next year?
Yeah.
Why aren't we reactive, and why don't we take note of those opportunities? Because, you hope. The Isle of Man is such a beautiful place to be, and every time you post something, you're contravening we're not locked down because we reacted quickly. We're able to do this, and I think in UK, I don't know, you're the financial expert. Are they going to have to put up taxes to pay for this? Who's going to pay for this, Sharon? Is the Isle of Man going to be attractive an offshore centre? Will they try and close us down? We don't know.
We don't know.
But at the moment, one of the best places in the world to be is the Isle of Man.
No, totally. I couldn't agree more. So, John, just to move this episode to a conclusion, I always ask guests a few sort of same questions at the end, really, just to get a measure of where we are. So, what books have you read lately that you would recommend?
At the moment, on my desk, and what I'm involved with, I'm not someone that goes home and reads. If I start a book, I have to finish it. So if I'm on holiday and start books, I read on holidays, but don't talk to me because I'm reading a book. Does that make sense?
It does.
Where Jo will read in bed or whatever, and she can do a few chapters, and I can't do that. If I get into something, I've got to read it. So the book I'm reading at the moment for pleasure, if you like, is The Secret Diary of Elena Cobham. And she was described as a witch, but she was imprisoned genuinely in Peel Castle. This is the story of her being moved around at Bow Maris and whatever.
What era was that?
1400s.
Right. Okay.
So so it's a beautiful book. Now there's I'm fascinated by stone art and iconography in the Viking and Celtic times, and there's great plans afoot. When I take people around, more and more people are wanting to see these crosses. So then there's a new project to potentially build a new cross house in Mackle, which would be fantastic for the Isle of Man.
Okay.
But there's a new book out, and it's called The Rooney Inscriptions of the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And it's gone into more detail. It's been a long time coming out.
So the actual that's the cross that's at Mackle, isn't it? And those are the original ones that are Mackled, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's replicas in the Manx Museum.
Yeah, quite remarkable that all these original crosses are all in our churches.
Yeah.
And just there. And that's why someone's beginning to think, actually, these are priceless artefacts. They need to be more secure.
They need to be taken care of.
And they need to be taken care of. So the museum have identified that and are working on it.
Okay. So the runic inscriptions of the Isle of Man by Michael P. Barnes.
Yeah. And also, what's fascinating, there's different types of runic script and styles. And there's a suggestion in this book that one of the styles may have started on the Isle of Man.
Goodness, sorry.
You know about gout. Anyway, that's from the thing.
Okay.
This book, this is a beautiful story.
Okay, so that's Folk.
Folk.
By Zoe Gilbert.
Yeah. Now, Zoe Gilbert is my niece.
I was going to say. Right.
And when you open the book, you'll see. So I've obviously been passionate, that word, horrible word, passionate about my folklore and the Isle of Man and the stories. And Zoe has been coming over since a child. Yeah. And learning these stories. And she's been inspired to write a book.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Called Folk. And it's what was on the Costa Shortlist Story Award. So she's become... And what I love about this, and I'm going to give you a copy of this because if you haven't read it, you need to.
No, I will. Thank you.
But in the map, she's done a fictional word. She talks all about the burning of the gorse, and it's short stories, and they're really dark. Yeah. But she's become an acclaimed writer now in the UK, and she's doing more books and stuff. But if you look in the middle...
Quail.
Quail and all these places. Yeah. But the most beautiful thing is there's the Bard's house in the middle. Yeah. And... That's our house. Oh, so Shakespeare in the Bard. So, but isn't that lovely? It is. That someone who's come on the holidays to the Isle of Man, because her father used to live here, John Gilbert, who was an artist. He's just since moved away, but she was inspired by the stories, and she's gone on to write books. Books about it.
Great. I'll enjoy that. Thank you. Thank you. So that's Folk by Zoe Gilbert. Right. Okay. And what's your favourite quote, John? Now, this is something that's very special to me, and I brought this to show you. Okay. So it's something my dad gave me. And obviously I don't have much from my dad, but that's what he gave me. Oh, gosh. Okay. And that's the quote. Yeah. Read it. Make use of time, let not advantage slip. By? Shakespeare. Yeah. So he gave me that and he said, that'll stand you right. Yeah. And it's right, isn't it? Yeah. You know, it's precious time. Yeah. At this moment, one of our families just got, bowel cancer. And they're the same age as us, and you just think
live every day like it's your last, because you never know what's around that corner.
No.
And that's a good message, isn't it? If you waste time, you can't get it back. It's gone. And I think I've been full on it.
You certainly have.
So,
yes. Yeah. That's great. Thanks, John. And where people can go to learn more about you, then you're on every social media platform I looked on your own website, which those links I'll put in the show notes, so people can find that. But in the meantime, best of luck with your new role. How long is the appointment for?
6 months.
Right.
Because the tender process was a bit late in happening. It's been extended to 31st of March, but are our borders going to be open before the 31st of March?
Doubtful.
I don't think so, unfortunately. And,
so it's really events that you need to be thinking about putting on for locals then?
What it is, it's the Economic Recovery Group have identified that we need to get money back in certain sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
So some people are doing really well, like builders. You can't get builder or painter for lovely money because everyone's stuck in redoing their houses.
To be honest, you never could.
No, true. But in the hospitality and events industry, we're kind of wiped out. And let's be honest, also, when you see the Superbike champions got a race on the 4th of June next year, I don't think the TT's got, we keep our fingers crossed and positive, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So the money is to try and get out before the 31st of March. But we're trying to... Interesting enough, because I'm the Domestic Event Fund Co-ordinator, I had to sign a document saying I can't apply for any money because of conflict of interest. Yeah, sure. But what we delivered on Friday,
that was what
with 5,000 people, a new event that people want to come and visit from off island already. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do with the money that's available. Okay, create new legacy events.
So, clue to anybody who's thinking of applying for this fund: find all the footage you can from eHowner from last week, and I guess we can put a link to that on our page as well. If you could just let me have a link, that'd be great.
No, so it's an exciting time. So as I've been doing events on the Isle of Man for 35 years, and doing events before I came to the Isle of Man, there's never been an opportunity to have assistance and underwriting like there is now.
That's great.
And we want new legacy events. If you come to me for a Christmas market, that's not what it's about. Yeah, it's about something that's going to stand the test of time. And also to give you confidence to do it in COVID. Yeah. So if you've got all these costs and then we're locked down, that will
it makes a lot. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, John. Well, that's really great. Thank you so much for coming on to Island Influences. Lovely to speak to you.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.